guys, it's me. I'm back after a long hiatus, bro. I gotta stop doing this, but I just wanted, before I show you my Upper Day, man, this was a long time in the making, dude. I recorded this maybe a month before, and I've been recording this kind of rant for, like, I really just don't know what to say. I have a few things prepared on what I want to say, but I just don't want to say, so bear with me. I know that maybe, if you want to skip, like, it should be, there should be a timestamp, but, what I wanted to rant about was the bodybuilding black pill. So what is black pill exactly? Black pill is basically a mindset that you are basically, it's over for you if you don't have, like, if you aren't extremely lucky with your genetics. And I think that's an extremely toxic mindset, and just something that especially young, beginners in lifting, or young people, or in general, like 15-year-olds shouldn't be hearing, Well, there's always an expectation to keep your expectations grounded. A lot of, like, nihilistic, very deterministic things really appeal to young people, and I can understand why it appeals to people, because when you're young, you're probably going to be faced with a lot of failures in life, and you're going to want to find some rationale to why you are failing in life. It's like, and a lot of things like, economic determinism, with, like, oh, if you don't have X amount of money, you are basically, if you aren't born rich, if you weren't, if you didn't grow up in X or Y circumstance, you are, and there are, it's reasonable to say some of these things, because sometimes there are things in this world that are not that fair, and but things like bodybuilding, right? This is where it gets extremely dangerous. This is where it gets extremely dangerous with people's healths, right? Like, because one thing that people have to understand is that pharmaceutical companies, they benefit from this. They benefit, the people who are selling the steroids, they benefit from, you wanting to, you believing in this stuff, because it's like, if you know anything about the black pill community, like, in general, like, not like the bodybuilding black pill community, but like the black pill community, right? A lot of these people, like, they will quote unquote try to ascend. They will try to, like, do it. And what they'll try to do, right, is they will do extensive surgeries on themselves, and it's like, or they'll try to take, like, peptides and, to do something, But the funny thing is that, there's a message of, like, genetic elitism, but they are trying to, what is it? I suppose it's a little hypocritical that they're doing this, because from, like, a genetic, Darwinist perspective, wouldn't that be selfish to make yourself appear better through modifications to yourself that don't come inherently from your own genetics, to make yourself more how do you say, to enhance the chances of yourself spreading your genes? And then, isn't that selfish that you're spreading your genes? That's why this mindset is extremely toxic. I'm not saying I believe in that. That's just from their perspective, like, oh, if you're because they do have this, like, social Darwinist kind of perspective, where it's like, because, the process for selecting, who will be the next generation is inherently violent. Like, you're telling, like, if you are a person, right, who is ugly, and if you're telling a person who's ugly, like, you want to reject them, right, like, oh, I just think you're not my type, but you really mean this is really where it is, like, they're ugly, but, like, you're basically saying you don't want them to spread on their genes, and you want them to you don't want to take on the honor of spreading on their genes. Okay, edit, guys, when I say
you want their generation to not continue. I mean, biologically, naturally, many would find this pretty messed up, and maybe there would be a situation where someone wants to date your relative but not you, but still your genes aren't being passed on, and it's still pretty insulting. So I think that people don't actually, biologically this is their rationality, but socially they won't say this, and this is not projection. This is just like this is just me being honest, like just with how people are, because like I suppose people don't hate you, but this is what the result is biologically. This is what they actually mean, what people actually mean. But that doesn't mean people are bad people necessarily for thinking this, because people are multifaceted. What people biologically want, like people have preferences, and we shouldn't like demonize people for that. That's not good either. But people, and also it's like, but yeah, that's just the selection process in a nutshell, essentially. Because like, some people get selected, and guess what? The bottom 1%. I'm going to talk about this later as the video continues after this voiceover. But the bottom 1% basically gets shoved down, and there's no way you can justify that other than people just getting screwed over just because no one wants to help them or anything. But I will say this, just to continue, because I don't think I say this in the continuing sentences that I say in the rant, but like there are a lot of things that there are many other things that determine your worth as a person, because our society now is so focused on sexual prowess and stuff like that, just being a quote unquote slayer, male or female, that like we have, as a society, like in the West especially, we have lost the ability to just have like a room for people who are quote unquote incels, because there are people, you know the archetype of the celibate aunt. If you know who that is, it's like that one aunt you have, or that one uncle you have, that one person in your family that you have that was never able to land a partner, but like still is a highly respected member of your family, and you shouldn't be disrespectful to those people. Those people are they have worth outside, and you can find fulfillment outside of having a significant other or whatever. But nowadays it feels as if like you're derided for that. You're like and it's horrible, because like people should have a space like in society for that, for them to have a sense of accomplishment aside from romantic stuff. That's why it was kind of that. I was just thinking about like monasticism, and just how those people also like to be a good monk. Like I think I heard this from an Orthodox priest, but you have to be a good you should, if you are to be a good monk, right, you should also be a good married man, which basically means that you should have the qualities of a good married man in order to be a good monk. So yeah, it's just my rant, like, because I got a little off track here, so let me continue. And and essentially those people, right, at the bottom 1% of the genetic pool, right, they get screwed over by basically everyone, and it's like this uncomfortable truth that people don't want to acknowledge, and it's really messed up if you really want to think about it. But then you have these people who actually believe in it, but actually don't want to believe in it at the same time, because they're constantly modifying themselves with like they're trying to modify like your facial structure, if you're trying to, but it's not inherent to your own genes. So are you trying to spread on your genes? Like, isn't that selfish? Like, like in your worldview, that because like according to this like black pillars, like these people just don't deserve to exist. Like and it's horrible. And why this extends to bodybuilding is because like I suppose like it really shows the fruits of what the black pill really does, and it's like it's this destructive like ideology that
if you really start to let it get in your head, instead of just having it, having yourself like understand, hey, this is how genetics work. Hey, if I have a high inserting tricep, it's not just going to magically grow like lengthwise. If you're not letting it set yourself some realistic expectations, you're gonna eventually get screwed over, and you're gonna want to go hop on gear and stuff like that, and that's not gonna be good because you're gonna end up with multiple health issues. And it's not just, oh, you die suddenly of a heart attack. What happens if, hey, your doctor tells you to stop doing it and you have to stop doing it, and then you just end up a shell of yourself? And that's the whole thing about like why I don't go on gear, and why I think that like the whole peptides thing is a very slippery slope, because once you, and I'm not saying like oh, now I'm not going to take vitamins, because it's a slippery slope, but like the whole like peptides marketing thing is very suspicious, and I really don't like it. But like that's just my own reservations. I'm not really educated on the facts, so I won't really say much on it. But the thing is that another thing is that our perception of natural bodybuilding is very skewed in social media. Bad genetics could basically mean anything. Bad genetics is something that the top 1% will probably know if they are gifted from the moment before even they start lifting. So but if you have like, if you're like skinny fat, you might not know your muscle building genetics. You might not know, like, so if you start off early, right, and you could be in, like, let's say, let's say, okay, this is like, imagine a distribution, like a bell curve distribution kind of thing, like, let's say this is the top 1%, right? Like, they already know, but like, they already know, they have like, they look at their bicep and it's like, oh, it's, I have pretty good genetics, but you could be here, right? And you could just be like, without any lifting, you just look skinny, like you look skinny, but you could have good muscle insertions, you could have a good reception to training, but you don't know that because you haven't trained yet. But if you look at yourself right now and you say, oh, I just don't look that good, so that means I don't have good genetics, that's very, like, that, like, excludes, like, first of all, you're calling, like, maybe, like, 75% of the, like, like, let's say, like, 25% already knows, right? And then you're calling it this other 75% who just don't know, like, oh, bad genetics. You might, just saying, like, they might have bad genetics, but you don't know that, It's like, you don't know, like, and also bad genetics is very strange, it's kind of subjective. I mean, if someone has everything right, like, good frame, good muscle insertions, very receptive to training, high pain tolerance, and, stuff like that, there are some guys who are like have genetic strengths and genetic weaknesses, and they have awesome physiques. I saw a guy who's a natural bodybuilder. I forgot his name, but dude, this guy is one of the most narrow people I've ever seen. Like, his clavicles are like here. Like, dude, like the dude is so narrow. Like, I don't mean that to say, like, to insult him, but his muscle insertions are so round. Like, if he did the side tricep, right, and it was absolutely awesome, dude. But like, regardless, I want to talk more about like how people just like how natural bodybuilding correlates to the bodybuilding black pill, because one thing that people don't know is like basically steroids is basically giving yourself good genetics. Like, if you've seen some guys who are on steroids, like your local, the guy is on steroids because he has that weird skin and, just like, acne and just weird muscle shape. It's like, it's not a natural, like, look. I mean, I'm not sure if that's really, really, really scientific to say real muscle, like, weird muscle look. But some guys, they just kind of look weird, And, but the thing is that these guys, right, some of these guys, your local guy in your gym who takes steroids, right? Sometimes he has an FMI below 25. And 25 is like a quote unquote the natural, the natural limit or whatever. But it's not really a hard limit, I would say, because honestly, if you train, if you train long enough, I feel like you could just, if you have the right circumstances, yada yada, you could definitely, go past it. But but it's basically like giving yourselves good genetics, because like you can get away with whatever training you can when you're a natural bodybuilder, right? And you just have average genetics. You need to be much more on top of your training compared to other people, right? You need to be thinking about, hey, like, I need to manage my fatigue. I can't just be doing 5 sets of spider curls, 5 sets of preacher curls, 5 sets of single arm preacher curl aside, 5 sets, like I've seen some, people on steroids like do stuff like that, and it's genuinely awful. But like, what was I gonna say? I'm really losing track of myself on this rant because I gotta go soon. But like, the way we perceive natural bodybuilding is absolutely cooked in the whole like fitness industry. If you remember the whole Hussein thing, the whole Julian Fitzgerald thing, I actually think their physiques are naturally attainable. Like, you might think of myself as delusional, but I feel like I, as a delusional person, will make it much farther than you with your realistic expectations, because I at least have something to shoot for that is farther, and I will at least put more motivation into my training, because we already know, at least we already have a good idea that training motivation impacts things like motor unit recruitment, stuff like that. So it's important to understand, right? Like, our perception of natural bodybuilding is so skewed because, one, the top natural bodybuilders, all those natural, like, have you ever heard of Doug Miller? Have you ever heard of Doug Miller? For my 15-year-old audience, have you ever heard of Doug Miller? No, you haven't. Most likely you haven't heard of him. Have you ever heard of Jeffrey Verity Schofield? No, you haven't. Jeffrey Verity Schofield at least tries to make his presence known, but like guys like Doug Miller, like all those guys who are like the top natural bodybuilding champions, like, they do not have a social media presence at all. And if you look at most natural bodybuilding shows, I feel like most people's perceptions, at least I hope that I'm speaking for a lot of people, but the guys are all the way over there, and the camera's all the way over here. And, you're seeing them and you're like, oh yeah, they look natural, because you don't really see how big they actually are. And some of these guys are 5'9", and even 5'9", average height, if you have been training for 10 years with good training, you're most likely going to look absolutely massive to the normal person, but the thing is that it's taken very far away. You can't see them, and plus they're very depleted. So, but the thing is that would give them an advantage if you were close up to them and you could see all the definition and stuff like that. You're far away, so you can't really see their definition. And, some people think that definition means you're automatically a steroid guy, but the thing is that, another thing is that if you are extremely good at natural bodybuilding, and, this is the social media lens, and you decide to get the right angles and the right lighting, opposite to the natural bodybuilding show view, where it's like you're looking at guys like super far away, because they're not going to focus on one guy. Most likely it's going to be like, it's mostly going to be just like like all the competitors. If you look at a guy on social media, he's most likely not going to stand far away from the camera. He's going to go towards the camera, make himself look bigger, but then you have guys, you use all the right angles, lighting, stuff like that, pump, and, you're at a relatively healthy body fat percentage where you have enough glycogen, stuff like that, to make your muscles look bigger. Some people are still going to find a way to call you not natural. It's a catch-22. Damned if you do, damned if you don't, And this is the whole thing with natural bodybuilding and, why people end up just, wanting to go on steroids or, getting on the black pill, like, oh, I need to take steroids, it's over for me. Because this is just showing how destructive the actual, shows you how destructive the actual ideology is, because, you now need to take something external to yourself, external to who you are, and, it can be guaranteed that, you know, you may or may not have good genetics, but what is not guaranteed is what you have to guarantee for yourself. I think I left this on another person, you know, who commented on my previous account. I had a previous TikTok account, got hacked, but like, oh, I'm not gonna make it, you know? It's like, it matters if you try, okay? It matters if you try. So that's one thing that I just want to leave you with, like because you will get farther being delusional. I think Basement Bodybuilding said this, but like the person who is delusional, who has unrealistic expectations, will get farther than the guy who has realistic expectations. You know, this is the thing. Like, why do you need to have realistic expectations? To be fair, like, I can understand why people are like, oh, you're not gonna get this look, but like, you know, why do you need to have such, you know, it comes to a point where like the realistic expectations thing is it's just such a horrible thing. Just, you know, it's not even useful, to be honest. Like, so yeah, that's just all I'll leave you with. Here's the upper date that I did. Some of the clips I just don't have because I deleted them off my phone. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Yeah, be sure to like the video, subscribe maybe, and you know, follow my TikTok. You know, I'm gonna put it up here maybe. So yeah.